College football, where tonight the playoff committee will reveal its latest rankings, and all eyes will be on Georgia, which beat Tennessee by 2 touchdowns on Saturday, a week after their loss to Ole Miss triggered their fall all the way to number 12. I want you to hear Ole Miss's head coach Lane Kiffin talking about his belief about what he wants in the SEC championship game.
I've talked to other coaches, so I'll just kind of give you the feeling from some other coaches that, they don't want to be in it. The risk to get a bye, the reward to get a bye versus the risk to get knocked out completely. I mean, that's a really big risk.
So we got Heather and Paul in here, and Lewis, who of course does the college games for us. It's a fascinating little point that he's making. Let's make sure it's clear. The 4 highest rated conference champions will get a bye. That's the plus, let's say, of being in the SEC championship game and winning it. But Heather, the fallback, the other side of that, is if you make the SEC championship game and lose, maybe you get knocked out entirely. Is that a flaw in the system?
Well, not only do you get knocked out entirely, if you do get an at-large bye, you have to win 4 straight games to win the national title. Is it a flaw in the system? Look, it's the one that the FBS conference commissioners agreed to. If you're Notre Dame, it's not a flaw because you're independent and you're sitting there watching the show if you're in without having to do that risk. Let me tell you what Kirby Smart told me this summer. He told me he's an SEC enthusiast to the core, and winning the SEC championship to him is as valuable as winning the national title because they're both equally as hard to achieve and just got harder.
Okay, so that's fine, and I mean, that's a whole other conversation, which I don't believe in for a second, but that's, Paul, let's just go to this here. Once to me, it seems this is a flaw in the system. Making the conference championship game should automatically be better than not making it. So getting in there and losing should not put you behind a team that didn't make it and thus didn't have that opportunity to lose. That's how I view it. Paul, you are the dean of the SEC. How do you view it?
I agree with you, Greeny. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey told me last week it should be a reward to get to the championship game. But the bad news is it is not. Kirby Smart last year had an undefeated regular season. He went to the championship game, lost to Nick Saban, and got knocked out of the playoffs. So, yes, it's what Lane Kiffin said is correct. You'd rather not go there, but the problem is you don't have a choice in the matter. There's going to be a tiebreaker, and you get in based on a number of tiebreakers. But the situation for Kiffin could be very dangerous. Here's why he doesn't want to go, because if he goes with a 10-2 record and loses, he is probably going to get knocked out because he has a loss to Kentucky, which is extremely bad. So it doesn't matter whether you want to or not. You better win the game if you go, though, if you end up with 3 losses, because you're very likely going to get knocked out.
Heather, you had another point.
Right. So the committee also considers who you're playing, where they're ranked, and how the game unfolds. Everyone's assuming just because you lose, you're going to get knocked out. But let's take Indiana and Ohio State this week. How that game matters and how that game is played out matters to the selection committee. If it's a close game and a loss to a top 5 team, you're probably not going to get knocked out of it. But if it's 2014 Ohio State, Wisconsin, and you lose 59-0, the answer's pretty clear. Also, toughen up. Win your conference championship game and prove that you're one of the best teams in the country.
Look at Heather calling them out. Lewis, you do the games every single weekend. Yeah. What do you make of this?
Yeah, look, I think there obviously there is some fear amongst SEC coaches that given the schedules that these guys play and the way that they are banging heads with some of the best programs and arguably, well, to me, inarguably, the best programs in the country, because I've seen them play, that they're going to get knocked out of the CFP because they're just going to wind up cannibalizing one another.
Right.
So I understand what the fear is, though. I just hope that the playoff selection committee is able to look at this objectively and go, when they sit in that room and they watch the tape, they really do pick the 12 best teams. That the 12 best teams make it here outside of the 4 conference championships, because there may be some 3-loss teams in the SEC that are better than teams that would, in this kind of scenario that people are talking about, that get into the college football playoff. There's no question about that.
Absolutely. So, Paul, final word. I'm going to take your temperature on this every week. How many teams, when it's all said and done, how many teams from your conference are going to wind up in out of the 12?
I think it will be 4, Greeny, and some of it depends on Notre Dame. If Notre Dame were to lose one of the last 2 games, it might open the door for 5.
Okay, so we're saying 4 or 5. You see the standings there. We'll see where everyone gets put tonight, and that'll be critical. Heather and Paul will check in with you tomorrow heavily as we await tonight, 7 Eastern, ESPN and the app, the exclusive reveal of the college football top 25. Reese and company breaking them down from top to bottom. They'll have coaches' reactions, and again, we will have lots of reaction to this coming up tomorrow.